So Dave asked that I talk a little bit about some of the changes that are taking place across NASA's Earth Sciences Division, and then also give some updates on where we're at with the disasters program. And so that's what I'm going to talk about today. And then before I close, I'll talk about two new consortia that I've recently launched for NASA, both under the disaster umbrella and one under another set of activities that I help manage for the Earth Sciences Division. So just to start it off, let's see. Hopefully I can navigate to the next slide. And I'm having major technical issues. This is going to be fun. Okay, so hopefully we are now seeing the Earth Science to Action strategy. So the way that NASA has been working, ooh, guys, this is going to be insanely interesting as we go through this. So, okay, so Earth Science. For a long time now, we've had five programs that are part of Earth Sciences Division. This part is not changing within the Earth Sciences Division, but what we're doing is evolving the way that we work together. And so those five areas have been, I think, integrated from a very clear institutional and almost engineering design. The first being technology, our Earth Science Technology Office, which builds technologies, high risk, high reward scenarios where people are learning what's possible under technology development, and that helps advance different technological approaches so that we can see advancement in the commercial settings. And so though a lot of what's built on the technology side ends up being influenced largely on the second component or program of Earth Sciences, which is our missions. Now, these missions can be our large satellite missions. They can also be the CubeSats and small sats, or our competed Earth Venture missions. But in any case, all of these missions are using technologies that are advancing over time. And the intent is to be able to understand our changing Earth in different ways. From the missions comes the data. The data is then stored in our Earth Sciences Data Systems office. And across there, they're not only thinking about how to store the data, but also really how to make the science open and usable to communities around the world. That includes formatting, latency, and other types of issues that are ideally designed and inputted or integrated into the mission side, that can often be considered a last mile approach once the data is already available. So we've got technology, missions, and then data. And then the two remaining efforts have been on where and how we use the data. On the research and analysis side, the RNA side, we've got teams that are able to say, if we had better software, could we take a certain approach to the science, or could we build an algorithm to improve operational response activities, or other predictive analytics. Those aren't often done in partnership with specific users in mind, but are meant to advance the science for greater impact. And then we've got applied sciences, which is looking at how to develop user-centered, human-centered design approaches to the development of decision support tools that eventually are then integrated into our partners' capabilities so that they're able to manage them in perpetuity. What's different about where we have been and where we're going with the Earth Science to Action strategy is more on how the interconnections among those five elements are going to start working together. And so foundationally, we still have the technology, the missions, and the data that I mentioned. Those have been connected for a long time for relatively obvious reasons, and will remain as they are. However, the changes that are taking place is that because we're moving to more focus or greater focus on impact and societal benefit, what we're trying to do is ensure that things like applications are considered much earlier on. And so all future missions from about a month ago on will now all formally be expected to integrate the consideration of applications in everything they do. That has not historically been the case. And so, as we're able to reinforce questions about data formatting, the decision support capabilities that would come out of the data, and who our stakeholders are, we feel that this will help transition us to better impact globally with the science that we're advancing. And that'll be something that not only do you see at the beginning on the technology and mission side, but will then come through in our open science forum with how we manage and then also provide open access to data. The second component, I would say, is where we've largely been very comfortable historically, but there is some change in integration in how this is being managed. And so we had RNA and we had applied sciences, but what we're trying to do now is talk about the I think the first steps towards advancing science in ways that still promote the development of predictive models and operational algorithms, et cetera, that our partners can use, but also allow us a set of test bed opportunities to test applications and other tools before they're made more broadly available beyond one partner alone. And so it's long been felt that the work that we've been doing in applied sciences is more akin to application incubation, that we have one PI and their science team, one partner, and then one decision support tool, and that it shows the promise, but that more could be done if that decision support tool could be developed with broader networks and communities in mind. And so that brings us now to what I would say is probably the core of the Earth Science to Action strategy, which is this next level of transitioning out of what we're calling applied science into what we're now calling Earth Action. And so it's being able to move beyond these test bed or predictive modeling outputs to ensuring more and greater impact through open source science principles, but also by extending the way that we fund science so that we are working beyond one partner or one decision support tool alone, so that we can get larger scalability and larger global impact out of the science that we're doing. And then the final piece, which I think has always been treated relatively complementary to all of this, but not necessarily as a core element of what we do, is the component of public understanding and exchange, which is really how we communicate these benefits to society. It's not enough to advance science for society. We also want to make sure that people understand what NASA is contributing to Earth sciences and what that means to our communities at large. And so one element of this has been the development of the Earth Information Center. So we now have a new installation at NASA headquarters in the East Wing that's focused on bringing the community in to learn about the science that's being done in their hometown in some cases, but also so that they can understand like how we're looking at the Earth, how we can see the Earth change, and what this means in terms of climate change and the impacts to communities. And so the intent here from Earth Science to Action is really to leave no one out of this story, to make sure that we're not just looking at the engineering and design solutions of technology, missions, and data, but ensuring that those directly benefit how we pilot activities, scale them to communities, and then communicate those advantages broadly to domestic and global audiences. So that is essentially our Earth Science to Action strategy. And I'm happy to answer any questions about that once I get through the rest of the presentation. But what I thought I would do is maybe take some of what probably sounds like somewhat nebulous details on where we're going with Earth Science to Action and explain what it would look like from something like the Disasters Program. And so as Dave mentioned, I took over the program in February of last year. There have been a lot of changes across the program. And so as we've been advancing in where we know we want to go and being able to write that down and really crystallize those pathways, it's beneficial to be able to come to all of you now and say, okay, this is the direction of the program, this is where we're headed, and this is what it's going to mean, broadly speaking. And so for the disasters program, we have identified three core elements for our portfolio. The first is disasters applications. This isn't different from what we've historically done, which is our competed portfolio. This is how we continue to fund scientists and partners to advance science for, I would say, anything from disaster prevention and risk reduction through to recovery and resilience. These are often in 3 to 5 year grants, but there are a variety of ways in order to fund applications. This will remain as a core component of the program. We're also developing a disaster response coordination system, which is our activities that are working directly in support of operational emergency management communities. And then the third component is our disasters portal, which takes a lot of the data that we're developing across the program, the data and data products, and hosting them and curating them in ways that make the information accessible to our partners. I'm going to talk a little bit about these in advance, like in more thorough or robust ways, so that there are a few examples to be given. So I thought, what better way to host an example than to talk about Maggie and Bandana's work. Actually, it's nice to have Bandana on as well with today's call. But the goal here is many of you are likely very familiar with the work that they're doing. They've been part of a long-term grant under the Disasters Program that's advancing access to global flood modeling and alerting with their partner, the Pacific Disaster Center. So on one hand, there's the science and technology development through the model of models, algorithmic approach for hydrologic models, so that they can develop, I would say, a robust approach to understanding global flood risk severity. There's the component of integrating it and developing it with their partner, the Pacific Disaster Center, so that it can be integrated into the disaster aware platform. And then those components together are then able to feed out alerts to partners around the world. This would historically be considered by new terms a one-to-one or an application incubation component. We've got the partner PDC, we've got Maggie and her team as the PI, and then the output is model of models. So where we're at today is disasters applications, but where an incubation, but where I think Maggie and her team are interested in heading with this work is seeing who else can benefit from these approaches that the team has been developing. And so being able to get it into the hands of other partners, other platforms around the world that could benefit in a similar way that PDC would take us from Earth incubation and application incubation into Earth action. And so it's the easiest way to explain that, because I know Maggie and Bandana have been very dedicated to seeing what more they could be doing, understanding that the work with PDC has been such a success. So that's one example we're giving of what that transition from earth science to action is looking like. And then for the program's perspective, most of our portfolio is about to come to a close this year. And so we're running a new solicitation in 2024. It'll be released in February with the intent to fund it in FY25, which means October 1st of next year. And the intent here is to focus more on risk reduction, recovery, and resilience. I think a lot of what we've done historically with the program has been looking at hazards and how hazards are changing over time and how the risk of these hazards is changing. What we will solidly be doing moving forward is focusing on the disaster specifically, which means that while the hazard is foundational, it is not a disaster unless lives and livelihoods are put at stake. And so we need to see more integrative approaches of understanding exposure and vulnerability with this hazard data in ways that bring us closer to disaster risk reduction instead of hazard awareness. And so this will be competed as a 2-year project, a 2-year solicitation to see where people are at. I'm hoping to run a National Academy study to better identify over the next year where we could be going in terms of earth science for disasters. And that will inform my 2027 solicitation, which will be a much more long-term and robust set of activities. Okay. The second component of the program is our disaster response coordination system. We've been supporting response efforts for a long time now under the direction and creative design of David Green. We're now moving into a more formal system. The intent here is to ensure that every center at NASA that has an earth sciences component, but also including the Center Johnson that has the International Space Station, will have dedicated staff that will be formally supporting all of our response efforts moving forward. And so this helps us move into a one concentrated NASA approach of leveraging the best science, technology, and also expertise across the centers so that we can provide improved partnerships, better products and decision support tools, and ideally improve how we support emergency responders domestically and globally. We've been in transition to this new, I would say, format or framework that we're creating across the centers. There will be a formal program office managed out of Langley Research Center where they will help manage the partnerships, the processes that we take, including scenario exercises and training with our partners, but we'll also be able to make sure that the science stays new, but we'll also have a host of opportunities to also improve training so people know how we work, we know how they work before a disaster happens. This, most people should be onboarded in the next couple months, which puts us into a period of transition. And so I'm excited to say that the launch will take place likely in April of next year. Once we are more clear about the final launch date, I'll be sure to send an invitation out to all of you in case you're interested in getting involved as this starts to evolve and finally kick off. And then finally, we've had the disasters mapping portal for quite some time. This effort is really focused on the disaster response element. As we support disasters and those working in operational contexts, the data gets curated and hosted to our disaster portal. It's standardized into GIS formats that allow for easy integration into our partners' platforms. We also help with processing and analysis and ensure better integration of the data and data products into our partners' platforms. But for me, this has been incredibly beneficial for the program. But I think it just touches at the part of where we are beneficial and what we could be doing. And so we're in the process of running a number of stakeholder workshops with our partners. This includes agency partners, FEMA, NOAA, USGS, and others, USAID. But we also have a suite of private sector and commercial entities that are giving us better information about what they would like to see out of this platform. And so in the next several months, we're going to start transitioning into a cloud environment. And the benefit here is that not only will it be moving beyond response alone to start hosting capabilities that answer questions from prevention and risk reduction through to recovery and resilience, but that will also be able to provide Jupyter Notebook environments in case people want to better work together more collaboratively, process and analyze data together. It allows for a testbed environment so that it reduces some of the operational issues that we face with some of the longer term applications projects that we run. And then finally, because there are different scales and different levels of users, we will be running a set of training, webinars, and educational capabilities to really lower any kind of barriers that exist for people to use data in different ways. There's a large interest in SAR data. And so I want to make sure that we're, getting people as familiar with working with it as possible, comfortable with like what it looks like and what it means in terms of their own decisional needs, particularly as we begin to move towards the launch of NISAR in 2024. And so with that, I'm going to stop talking about the disasters program and move really quickly to the last two elements that I wanted to share with you. The first being that outside of disasters, I do manage the socioeconomic assessment portfolio for the Earth Sciences Division. And so for the last 5 years, we've been funding an effort with Resources for the Future called Valuables that's been looking at the value of information and how earth science information benefits societies. That effort has come to a close this year. And so we've just launched a new effort with WWF, but also in partnership with NOAA and USGS. It's called the Collaborative Network for Valuing Earth Information, or CONVEY. And essentially, WWF is leading this for 5 years. It's an $8.5 million grant, co-managed by NASA and NOAA. The USGS is providing access to their societal benefit repository. So anything that we learn or develop along this way will be housed there for everyone to access. But the intent of the consortium is essentially twofold. The first is to be able to continue to advance methodologies and approaches for understanding how to evaluate and assess the benefit of earth science information into societal benefit. Part of what I think this group is really interested in is that it isn't one-to-one, right? Whenever we're making a decision, we're never making a decision based on one set of inputs, but rather it's that suite of information, the complexity of information that gets us to a set of activities that we decide to take. And so they're very interested in exploring the complexity of decision making and how we are able to use that understanding of complexity to evaluate the benefit of earth science information to decision making. The other element that they're doing is it's not enough, in my opinion, and the opinions of my colleagues here at NOAA and at NASA, to essentially advance the methods. We also have to create communities that actually understand what this means and how to do it themselves. And so they are focused on building a community of practice that helps exchange ideas, advance the knowledge, and also advance approaches so that we can look forward to greater communities that have the capacities to do this moving forward. If you want to join the network, there you can search for CONVEY on WWF's website. You can also reach out to me for more information in case you want to be connected to the team. But it's a pretty exciting effort that we're just starting this year. And then just 2 weeks ago, we launched NASA Lifelines. And this is essentially, this is a 6-year, $6 million effort that I'm leading. I would say it's a joint project between Earth Sciences Division at large and the Disasters Program, which essentially means that while this will be disasters focused to a certain point, that I am also encouraging looking at elements like food security, water security, health, infectious diseases, multiple, thematic areas beyond disasters alone, because humanitarians are not just one sector, but rather a multitude of sectors looking at systemic vulnerabilities, not only from, poor natural resource management, poor governance, et cetera, but also what it means in the context of a changing climate. So NASA Lifelines is managed by Dev Global. Rhiannon Price is the PI here. And the directed goal here is to understand what earth science information can do for the humanitarian sector. I came from the United Nations before coming to NASA. And when I was there, I was working a lot on integrating science into the decision-making of humanitarians. So it's been something that I've been hoping to do since I started at NASA 6 years ago, where we, as a science agency, start working more greatly with the humanitarian sphere. And so a lot of this effort will be exciting because it's not just about creating a community, it's about building the capacities for people to work in more collaborative and integrated environments. And I would say for any of you who are interested, go to nasalifelines.org if you want to find out more about this. But both the Convey community as well as the Lifelines community will also be at AGU this year. So you'll be able to meet them if there's any interest. And I think they'll be, presenting at different sessions. We'll have press releases, et cetera. But with that, I think I've gone probably over what Dave really wanted me to talk about. So I'm going to stop here and turn it back to all of you in case there are any questions. Thanks.